Hi there and welcome to the channel. I thought I'd do something different today by just talking through this really interesting article that Anthropic released last week around estimating AI productivity gains from Claude conversations. And it's something which I think is quite cool in that Anthropic have all of this use of their AI models and they're anonymizing and drawing that out and trying to figure out, well, can we actually do proper economic research to figure out what sort of time saving and productivity improvements are possible with AI technology? Now, there is a caveat where, yes, this is one of the big AI labs talking about how one of their products that they're selling to consumers and enterprise is adding value. So maybe we take a grain of salt around some of it, but let's just go through it, and I'm interested if you've got thoughts on this sort of thing. Drop a comment in below and subscribe. So here we go. Estimating AI productivity gains from Claude conversation. Overview. What do real conversations with Claude tell us about the effects of AI on labor productivity? Using our privacy-preserving analysis method, we sample 100,000 real conversations from Claude.ai, estimate how long the tasks in these conversations would take, with and without AI assistance, and study the productivity implications across the broader economy. Based on Claude's estimates, these tasks would take on average about 90 minutes to complete without AI assistance, and Claude speeds up individual tasks by about 80%. Extrapolating these estimates out suggests current generation AI models could increase US labor productivity growth by 1.8% annually over the next decade, roughly twice the run rate in recent years. But this isn't a prediction of the future, since we don't take into account the rate of adoption or the larger productivity effects that would come from much more capable AI systems. Our analysis has limits. Most notably, we can't account for additional time humans spend on tasks outside of their conversations with Claude, including validating the quality or accuracy of Claude's work. But as AI models get better at time estimation, we think our methods in this research note could become increasingly useful for understanding how AI is shaping real work. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I think the first thing we might want to have a look at is, what is this privacy-preserving analysis method? So let's just open that up. Clio, a system for privacy-preserving insights into real-world use. So I looked at this last year, and what's really interesting is what Anthropic have done is they've set up a harness to basically take all the conversations that are happening with Claude products and break it down into a privacy-protected way of teasing out what's actually happening at a task level, whether it's a life skills task, an art and design task, a programming task, when someone's using the Anthropic models. And this is effectively how they are able to do a lot of this research. Now, a lot of people are going to freak out and think that this is completely wild, but what I like about Anthropic's approach here is they're making the effort. They share a lot of data about how they get to use Clio to identify these tasks and do it in a privacy protected way. And I think that even though there are a lot of potential risks down the track, this type of thinking about how do you track and monitor AI task use and then have a privacy protected way of figuring out at scale what millions and millions of these conversations and uses of Claude in both work and academic and home context mean in the long term. And what is quite interesting is this harness that they've put across their products gives them the ability to figure out what's actually being used. So over time, and I'm sure that all the other labs have something similar, but over time, they're going to be able to better adjust and tweak tools to better meet customer needs. So I think it's pretty cool, and we'll just leave that there, but that's what this Clio privacy protecting thing is. You can go off and look at it yourself on Anthropic's website. So back to this estimation of productivity gains. So the detailed summary is quite detailed, but look at the bolded points. Across 100,000 real-world conversations, Claude estimates that AI reduces task completion time by 80%. The estimated scope, cost, and time savings of tasks varies widely by occupation. Extrapolating these results to the economy, current generation AI models could increase annual US labour productivity growth by 1.8% over the next decade. This would double the annual growth the US has seen since 2019 and places our estimate towards the upper end of recent estimates. This is a really interesting thing because I studied economics, and labour productivity growth is one of those critical things that drives economic growth. It drives wage share, it drives returns on investments in education and capital and all the stuff. Labour productivity growth is absolutely critical. For the same hours worked, you want more output, you want more efficiency, you want everything to be better, faster and cheaper. And this is quite a bold claim. And let's just keep working through this and see what Anthropic are trying to say. So, estimating Claude's productivity impacts. We use Claude to estimate how long it would take people to do real-world tasks with and without AI assistance. Tasks associated with higher wage occupations tend to take more time. Based on current capabilities, the estimated time savings suggests an additional 1.8 annual labour productivity growth, assuming full adoption in 10 years. Now, this makes sense. So at the top far right of that quadrant, you have management and legal tasks, computer and mathematical tasks. These are complex things. People who are using AI to get better productivity outcomes are going to have much more productivity growth because their normal hourly wage is higher. So if they save time, it's worth more to the economy for them to save time by using AI to reduce the time spent on tasks which they previously would have had to do manually. So this is a really interesting thing. Now, I'm going to skip through so we can take a look at some of these example AI accelerated tasks. And here's a really interesting example. Social science research assistants prepare tables, graphs, fact sheets, and written reports summarizing research results. 91% time saving. That's quite interesting. Office clerks troubleshoot problems involving office equipment such as computer hardware and software. 56% time savings. I'm not sure about you, but one thing that I've been doing over the last year or so, and in our household, is every time we have something go wrong with a piece of software, something's not working, we just dump the error code or the question into one of the AI tools that we're using and see what happens. Quite often you either get an instant fix or you get a step-by-step suggestion of how to solve that problem. And that's quite rapid. I remember a few years ago where you had to go off and basically Google, find manuals of PDFs and all this painful internet browsing research to figure out how to solve some of these edge case things. Sometimes you can just take a photo of a broken household thing now and get a step-by-step, how do you fix this? What thing do you need to get to replace it? And all this sort of stuff is quite cool. So it's really interesting to see what they're breaking down here. Now, the last one I'll call out separately is financial analysts. Interpret data on price, yield, stability, future investment risk trends, economic influences, and other factors affecting investment programs. 80% time savings. Now, what's really interesting to call out here is Anthropic have quite a big program looking to try and expand their enterprise AI capability in the financial services space. Why the financial services space? Well, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of complex tasks, there's a lot of tasks that can be accelerated or replaced with AI tools, especially if you have access to unique proprietary data and you can connect Claude Desktop, Claude Code to this proprietary data and then get this analysis back in a much faster time and with a high level of quality than if you have analysts running around making Microsoft Excel spreadsheets doing all the sort of analysis. So it's interesting that they put that in there. It feels like this is slightly aligned towards the enterprise sales efforts. So continuing on, one of the best charts in this report, I think, is this Claude's estimate by occupation category. So they've got occupation category, time without AI, average wage, average task cost and time savings. And what you can see is the quote-unquote more complex and more well-remunerated jobs, if they can save time, it's more economically valuable for them to be using AI to get more leverage in their jobs. So management roles, banking and finance, computer and mathematical, architecture and engineering. This is a really interesting insight and it makes sense. So if a lawyer can use AI to get more efficient and reduce the time it takes to do lower value tasks, that means they can spend more time on higher value, more complex tasks such as servicing clients, attending court, all this other sort of stuff I'm sure lawyers do. Now, what is really interesting is that all of this is working towards a future where AI tools will help the people who want the help the most from the AI tool. So you have to go out and figure out how to use AI in your own sector, for your own job, for the tasks that you do on a daily basis. And what this research kind of hints at is that a lot of the gains from AI use in tasks across the economy are already possible if you just start to use the tools and test them out and try them. So this task level efficiency is the bottom-up part of economy-wide productivity gains from AI use. You start using AI at your job, you become more efficient, your employer becomes more efficient, they become more profitable, they lower costs, they deliver better outcomes for their customers, they meet regulatory obligations more easily. This might sound a bit all fantastical, but this bottom-up task level analysis is really, really interesting. And over time, it's going to be really fascinating to see how this all plays out. Now, this chart is pretty cool. Labor productivity contribution by occupation. The top category there is software developers. It's not surprising that software development has been where so much focus on the agentic coding models has been in the last few years. Claude Code, ChatGPT Codex, all these tools, Cursor. There's a lot of money spent on wages for software developers. If you can either make those workers more efficient or replace them, that represents an enormous opportunity for the corporate world. It also means that work that previously would have required hiring one software developer and incurring all of those fixed costs. If you run a small business that doesn't have developers, you might be able to replicate that through vibe coding and agentic coding tools and get partial access to that capability and that skill without needing to incur that fixed cost of one developer plus all the assorted infrastructure that they need. So I think in a sense, the labor productivity impact extends well beyond people who do a job using AI to help do their job more efficiently. It also means people in other roles using tasks in adjacent professions to do things that they previously would have had to go out to market and hire someone or go out and find a contractor or vendor who supplies that product and service for them. So this is all really interesting stuff. Now, I think that one problem with research like this, and Anthropic address it here, is there are a lot of assumptions and there are a lot of business change management issues that come from trying to roll out AI in a workplace. And I think that over time, a lot of benefits from AI aren't necessarily going to be in the biggest corporations. A lot of them have too many cultural issues and legacy data quality and technology infrastructure issues, which means it's going to be really, really hard for workers in those businesses to experiment with these bottom-up task improvement steps using AI tools. Now, what that means over time is there's going to be a disparity in who benefits from AI. Already, you have a lot of developers who are operating on the frontier and they are seeing enormous increases in productivity. At the same time, you have developers who aren't even allowed to visit any of the AI websites in their browser, let alone install any of the AI tools in their IDE environment, let alone use anything like Claude Code or ChatGPT Codex in a professional environment. So this jagged performance or rollout is going to be something really interesting to watch, and I hope that as part of this whole economic index research that Anthropic is doing over time, they expand that scope of what they're sharing so we start to better understand what the firm level use of this is, breaking it down to small, medium and big corporate and government users. It's going to be really interesting to see how broadly distributed this can go, because the equal opportunity that comes from having access to this tool, provided you have the ability to pay for it, is going to be absolutely enormous in terms of productivity growth and impact on the global economy over the next few decades. So I hope you enjoyed this different style of video. I'm just talking through I found interesting and trying to map it back to my own personal experience. If you like this sort of thing, you can subscribe and drop a comment below, because I'm really interested in the views that people have around the potential biases around this sort of analysis and what you'd be looking for or worried about when you see a report put out by, like I said at the start, a business that is selling this AI technology to everyone, doing research on it and highlighting the efficiency benefits. So let me know what you think, and I'll catch you in the next video.